Good evening. Welcome to the Scottsdale Planning Commission public hearing. The city encourages your interest and participation in the public hearing process. The Planning Commission is an advisory board to the City Council on land use and zoning matters. The meeting agenda items are development applications that require public hearings. The Planning Commission considers the request and makes a recommendation for approval or denial to the City Council. The City Council makes the final decision for or against approval of the application. The agenda consists of the roll call, minutes approval of the prior meeting. Continuances are for items that will not be heard tonight. Withdrawals are for items that have been withdrawn from any further consideration. Consent agenda is for items not likely to require a presentation or discussion. All items on the consent agenda may be voted on together. Any commissioner may move any item from the consent agenda to the regular agenda. Regular agenda is where each item includes a presentation and recommendation by staff, a presentation by the applicant, and public testimony. After, the applicant will have the opportunity to respond to the public testimony. The Planning Commission then discusses the case and votes. Non-action is for items for discussion, and no vote will be made by the Planning Commission. Citizens wishing to speak on any agenda item may fill out a blue speaker card, or if not willing to speak, may fill out a yellow comment card and turn it in at the staff table before an agenda item is to be discussed. The chair will call you by name when it is your turn to speak. When called, come to the podium, state your name and address, and then begin speaking. Groups wishing to speak should elect a spokesperson to represent the views of the group. To facilitate the meeting, your comment will be limited to 3 minutes for individual speakers, 1 additional minute for each additional individual present at the meeting who has contributed their time to a representative speaker, up to 10 minutes. Please format your speech to be accommodated within the applicable time frame given. For convenience in timing presentations, a light system is installed on the podium. The lights will be green for 2 minutes and yellow for 1 minute. Please conclude your comments when the red light appears. Thank you for your interest and time, and now I'll begin in the meeting with a roll call.
Chair Higgs.
Present.
Vice Chair Young.
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Present.
Commissioner Kaminsky.
Here.
Commissioner Ertel.
Here.
Commissioner Joyner.
Here.
Commissioner Scarborough.
Here.
All present. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sure Mr. Curtis will do the same, but I just want to welcome our newest commissioner, Commissioner Joyner. Welcome. Now we'll move on to public comment. Any general comment for non-agenda items? Nope. All righty. So administrative report from Mr. Curtis.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Higgs, members of the Planning Commission, and also welcome Commissioner Joyner, recently appointed, previously served, as you all know, with the Development Review Board during your rotation, so hopefully not a new face. Just a reminder regarding tonight's agenda, there was additional correspondence. It's in front of you. You may have seen that already from the property owner of one of the cases, be item number 2. Also, it's our understanding that item number 2 should be moved to the regular agenda because at the very least, it looks like the applicant wants to discuss stipulation number 3, dealing with landscaping. So if you're okay with that, that would be probably the appropriate measure in terms of moving it off of the consent agenda onto regular. Beyond that, we do have the next meeting scheduled. I'm trying to remember what date that was, but in 2 weeks we do plan on meeting again. The second Wednesday of July, just the actual number escapes me. Excuse me, June, yes. So that's all I had for you now. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So now we'll move on to action items, starting with consent agenda. We do have 2 consent agenda items. Number 2, 1 UP 2024, and see, this is why we moved Commissioner Scarborough. I just said that to remind me even closer to me so I can hear him that if I miss the approval of regular meeting minutes, that he will do this now. So I would like to ask for approval of the regular meeting minutes from April 24th.
So move.
A motion from Commissioner Ertel, and a second?
Second.
And a second from Commissioner Kaminsky. Roll call vote, please.
Chair Higgs.
Yes.
Vice Chair Young.
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Yes.
Commissioner Kaminsky,
Yes.
Commissioner Ertel,
Yes.
Commissioner Joyner,
Yes.
Commissioner Scarborough.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we can move on to action items. We have two consent agenda items this evening. Agenda item number 2, 1 UP 2024, and number 3, 11 AB 2017, number 3. There have been requests, and following on to what Mr. Curtis had mentioned, for agenda item number 2 to move to the regular agenda. As for agenda item number 3, it is my understanding we do not have a request to move that to the regular agenda. If that is still the case, can I get a motion for approval of agenda item number 3?
Chair Higgs, I'll make a motion for recommendation of approval of City Council for case 1 UP 2024 per the staff recommended stipulations after finding that the conditional use permit criteria have been met.
Okay, we have a motion from Vice Chair Young in a second.
Clarification.
Oh, sorry.
Is the motion for consent for item 2 or item 3?
3.
Okay.
Was that read properly?
Thought you said use. Is it
Item-
the
item two.
abandoned?
Item 2.
We're looking at item 3
3.
for consent.
I'm sorry, I thought we were moving item 3 to regular agenda.
Item 2, we're moving.
2 moving.
We're moving item number 2, yes, to regular agenda. So the request is for
Sorry.
item number 3.
That was my mix-up. I thought we were
and
talking about
didn't
the abandonment.
even listen closely. I assumed
All
you
right.
read the right
Let
one.
me retract that.
Let's
and
try
make-
this again.
make a new-
Boy, we're off to a rough start. It's usually better than this, Commissioner Joyner.
All right, I will make a motion for recommendation of approval to City Council for case 11AB 2017, number 3, per the staff recommended stipulations after finding that the abandonment is consistent and conforms with the adopted general plan.
Okay, so now we have an official motion for agenda item number 3 from Vice Chair Young, and a second.
Second.
And a second from Commissioner Scarborough. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Chair Higgs,
Yes.
Vice Chair Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Kaminsky,
Yes.
Commissioner Ertel,
Yes.
Commissioner Joyner,
Yes.
Commissioner Scarborough.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will move on to our regular agenda where we have that one item that was moved. Agenda item number 2, which is 1 UP 2024, presentation from staff member Mr. Keith Niederer.
Thank you, Chair Higgs, members of the Planning Commission. This is case 1 UP 2024. It's a request by Crown Castle for site number 831802. The request is for a new 60-foot tall Type 4 wireless communication facility. That'll be in the design of an artificial eucalyptus tree. The site is located at 3007 North 73rd Street, as indicated by the star on the screen. This is located on the east side of 73rd Street, between Thomas Road on the south and Earl Drive on the north. Here's a close-up of the site, of aerial photo of the site. The proposed wireless facility would be located at the eastern side of the subject property, 3007 North 73rd Street. The area is primarily industrial-type uses. To the north, you have auto repair. To the east is auto repair as well. To the south is a 2-story office building, and to the west is the Tom Scott Apartments. The zoning on the site is PUD, Planned Unit Development. It is surrounded on the north, east, and south by C4 zoning. This is the proposed site plan. Again, the wireless facility and associated equipment would be located near the eastern end of the site. The tower and equipment would be surrounded by a walled-in enclosure. And the refuse enclosure, which is currently at the east end of the property, would be moved out to the entrance, or closer to the entrance of the property, where the truck can pick up the trash and then exit straight out. The plan, there's also stipulations to include 3 new trees along the 73rd Street frontage. This is an elevation of the proposed tree. Again, it's 60 feet tall, designed as a eucalyptus tree. And the associated ground equipment would be placed behind the compound wall. This tree does have the ability to hold an additional carrier as well. And initially, the tree was proposed at 70 feet. After some outreach was done with the community, Crown Castle agreed to drop it to 60 feet. Here's some photo simulations. This is looking west towards, from the east towards the west. And this one is looking from the west towards the east from 73rd Street. And this is looking from the north towards the south. These are some samples from the tree manufacturer that shows what the bark and the foliage would look like. And this is a finished product. I'm not quite sure where it is, but it is in the Larson Valmont packet of information for samples. Crown Castle does have an existing site to the directly southwest of the subject site. It's been in place since, I believe, 2008, and it's on a guide tower at the Corson Pools property. It is my understanding that if this site is approved this evening, this antenna and this wireless site would move to the new site, and this site would be decommissioned. The subject property was rezoned from C4 to Plan Unit Development back in 2012, and the subject property was supposed to be part of a future plan or a future phase of the Tom Scott property to the west. However, that did not occur, and the development was not constructed, and we have the owner here this evening. I don't believe there are plans to construct it. So we did, the 2012 PUD development plan is still entitled on the property, although it hasn't been built. The zoning ordinance does allow the zoning administrator to approve minor amendments administratively to the development plan for up to 10%. So to accommodate the location of the wireless facility, a 10% reduction was proposed in both the units and parking to create the room. So the bottom image is the site plan that was approved with or the development plan that was approved back in 2012, and the top one would be the minor amendment that shrinks the development plan down to create room for this cell site wireless conditional use permit. Regarding stipulations, staff stipulated 3 trees be planted along the 73rd Street frontage, and it's likely that those trees should be eucalyptus trees to match what's being proposed on the site. Also, staff is stipulating a landscape planter be created to the north side of the new refuse enclosure, so we don't have dead striped space there. The applicant has agreed to that. And also, staff is stipulating a 3-foot landscape planter between the asphalt parking lot and the new cellular equipment yard. Crown Castle has agreed to build the curbing and the decomposed granite. However, they're not in support of adding landscape in that area. Neighborhood involvement. Property owners were notified within 750 feet of the site by both the applicant and the city staff. The applicant did hold a neighborhood meeting back in November. And since the application was submitted, staff received 1 email in opposition from the property owner to the east, as well as another call from the current owner who has the cell site on their property today. Staff also received 2 emails in support, and all those should be in your, anything that was submitted in writing is in your packet. So the recommended action is that the Planning Commission make a recommendation to the City Council for approval, subject to the stipulations in your packet. And that concludes the presentation. We do have a representative for Crown Castle here this evening to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Do we have questions for staff before we move to the applicant? Yes, Commissioner Kaminsky.
Thank you. Could you go back to the slide that shows the minor amendment that you're looking at for the site plan?
Yes,
So
right here.
The one that you're, the top one is.
The top one's the proposed.
Okay, so that is showing the refuse at the east end adjacent to the enclosure, is that right?
I'm sorry about that. Yes, and again, this does not reflect the current built condition of the site. This is the approved development plan from 2012.
Okay.
So in the event this site plan gets built, while the cell tower is there, the refuse would go over here in front of the cell tower.
And in the current site plan with the current configuration, that next slide I think you had?
Correct. Yeah,
there
this
would-
reflects existing conditions on the site, so the refuse is currently down here on the east end,
So
so it would be moved out.
and
over
it's
here.
not feasible to keep the refuse at the east end in front of that enclosure?
There was concern from the solid waste department of the truck would have to back up too far, more than what's required. They didn't want it backing all
Did
the
they-
way out like it is today.
So they currently back.
They do, yeah, unless there's an open parking space where they can do a three-point turn to get out.
Okay. And then the other question I had is, was there any, I guess two questions, and some of this may be for the applicant. Was there any discussion of putting this cell tower yard at the west end of the site and keeping the cluster of trees that you're proposing along the street front with more adjacency to the artificial tree at the west end rather than the east end?
Yeah, that might be better answered by the applicant or the property owner, but
And then was there discussion about utilizing the Tom Scott Tower, which is already at about 58 feet, for additional height for a cellular facility on that building, taking advantage of existing architecture?
yes, Chair Higgs, Commissioner Kaminsky, that was staff's initial direction, was to approach the owner of the Tom Scott property to see if a roof-mounted facility could work. And from what I'm told by the applicant, the applicant or the owner of the property was not willing to host the site, but they were not in opposition to putting it on this property.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, unless there's any other questions for staff, we'll move on to the applicant to present. Will you please state your name and address?
You can go back and forth on here, by the left or right. Click. Put up the aerial.
That was good. Thank you. Hi, good evening. I'm Michael Campbell. I'm a consultant for Crown Castle. And we're here tonight. Appreciate what staff has done for us on this case. And my client has reviewed the conditions and stipulations. And the only one they have a question and a request on is to modify stipulation number 2, the first part of it, dealing with the 3-foot planter facing the equipment compound. The facility itself, where it's going to be positioned, is 330 feet, approximately 330 feet to the sidewalk on 73rd Street. The visibility of seeing the wall from that distance away and then putting a planter in front of it, it seems to be excessive in a request. There was a secondary part of the request to put the planter there as a buffer, so cars that were parking in the space next to it would not bump it. And so kind of a compromise is, let's put the concrete curbing, extend that down from the north parking area in front of the compound, put in matching decomposed granite in there and a couple of boulders, more of a rockscape. And that's minimal maintenance, there's no water needs. Vegetation sitting in top of the parking lot isn't going to last very long. So our request is just to modify that. All the other conditions and everything else that has been presented is 100% of what my client would like to see. So I can answer any questions that you may have.
Commissioner Kaminsky.
Yes, thank you. Could you tell us a little bit about your conversation with the Tom Scott and the use of their facility to host this cellular facility?
Sure. Chair Higgs, Commissioner Kaminsky. That part of the project was not in my hands at the time. The way these projects works, and I'm involved in strategic relocations. The Crown's internal real estate group worked initially on the current site. Their plan, when they have these relocations, and this request, I'll back up a step. This request was to relocate, redesign, was by T-Mobile, who is Crown's tenant on this structure. They need to expand. That tower, as you saw the picture, won't hold anything else. And it's worked for now, but for the last 4 years, they've wanted off. So the initial project was to try and find something on that parcel. That wouldn't work. That real estate team then reached out, per the direction of the city, to let's talk to Tom Scott. They had no interest in hosting it there. That building is actually 58 feet tall, which is taller than, height isn't always good. It's too tall. The most likely antennas would have to be on the face of the building and not on the top. The site is, as we currently sit, 50, I think it's 59 foot is the current one, and the rad center on that is 54 and 51. So they're trying to serve an area up and down 73rd into Old Town, not really crossing a Scottsdale Road, and serves basically east, north, east, south, and minimal west. So we're not going any higher with this new tree. Trying to keep the rad center at the same level as what's currently on the guide tower.
But you had asked for 70 originally.
Yes, that was their first request. And when that came back from staff, we went back to T-Mobile and said, do you really need the higher? And they said no.
Okay.
And I believe the modem there was to build the site for a second carrier. And it still is. The second carrier, if they go on, would come in at around, let's see, 50, probably in the 48 to 50 foot range,
Okay.
which would still serve the area. Just down the street, there's a small cell on a light pole there in front of that ProTech building on 73rd, and that is, it's at about 25 to 30 feet tall. So it's a dense area that is served by these sites.
Okay, thank you. Was any consideration given to putting it at the west end of the site?
Chair Higgs, Commissioner Kaminsky, no. We like to put these away from the street edge. I understand the idea of the kind of clustering the trees, but those trees just came up in yesterday's discussions. The concept of putting it away from street view, getting it back from the public view was our main goal, and that was the best accessible area for us also.
Were the trees were part of the initial conditions of approval, right? Okay, so it wasn't.
Which just came out, yes, I'm sorry, yes.
So I know I raised the question of those being eucalyptus. That came up yesterday. And I would prefer they not be 15-gallon. I would prefer something that was closer to tree size that will withstand the winds and make more of a statement if we go
Right,
this route.
I was figuring, and typically in a different jurisdictions, they'll come in, they'll want a 24-inch box tree with a 2-inch caliper trunk.
Okay.
And that's pretty standard. And that can transplant. The sustainability of that is much greater than if you come in with a 36-inch box tree. So, especially coming into the season that we are.
So my one concern with this, and I'm in full support of removing the existing facility that you have and putting in a new enhanced facility that serves the area, that's fantastic. But we have a situation where we have a property owner to the east who is impacted visually by this being located at their property line, and it is visible from Civic Center Drive. So you have a straight view from Civic Center looking west to this new cellular facility. Mm-hmm. And we have a property owner on the west side of 73rd who has written a letter of support for the project, but doesn't want it on their site. And so, I'm thinking, well, if they're okay with it, they could put it on their property, which would solve the problem, and it would hide it from being a separate fake tree, or have it at the west end where it was closer to their property and didn't have as much visual impact to the east. So that's really my concern, is putting in an artificial tree in a location that is out of context or character with the area, because it's in an area of single-story buildings where you have a building that's multiple stories just to the west of it that would be more in character with the height that you're proposing. So that's my concern.
Okay, Chairman Higgs, Commissioner Kaminsky. So yes, the Whitey's Garage is the one who had expressed concern about the location. They sent in an email early on. That was the request to drop the structure 10 feet. There were some additional questions that they had, which we resolved. The location, again, we located it back there. We try not to be on street frontage, and that was the goal here. That's why we chose to the east end. If we would go to the middle of the property, it would still be fine with us, but we were trying to get it out of the way. Now, the property owner, Mr. Frankel, the current the proposed location site owner, is here also. Part of it was, can you locate this site out of my way? So again, going back to that east corner, south or northeast corner is the best location for what we were seeing. And again, the Tom Scott apartment property does not work for them, and it was the obvious location to look at, but it is not a viable location for that property owner. And we can't make somebody want to put it up on our site. So.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Thank you. This question for staff. The planter that we were part of the stipulation that we're requesting, did it require water or anything unusual to it?
Yes, Chair Higgs, Commissioner Gonzalez, we were requesting drip irrigation to go into that planter, as well as shrubs every 7 feet or so.
Then, and what kind of plantings did you envision there, or did you spec anything out in particular?
No, that would be something to be determined at time of construction drawings, but it would be too narrow for a tree, so it would have to be some smaller shrubs. Our goal was to try and not have a wall coming directly out of the asphalt. It was to have a buffer, a little landscape buffer to soften the wall.
Okay. Well, to me, that sounds very reasonable, but we'll just let everybody else have their say. Thank you.
Vice Chair Young?
Thank you, Chair Higgs. So you're in agreement to install that planter. What's the aversion to installing the shrubs?
Chair Higgs, Commissioner Young, the long-term maintenance of the plants, if under the conditions, if those plants fail, then this site becomes out of compliance. My customer, Crown Castle, is not a landscape company, so they don't want the long-term maintenance.
Sure, but wouldn't they be connected to the irrigation system that the existing landscape planter on the north side of that parking lot?
That would be the approach, yes.
And it would be maintained then also by the property owner?
That's up to them. And
Okay,
the property owner is here at this time.
I mean, typically at the end of parking rows, you have a parking island, a landscape island with five shrubs and one tree. I would venture to say that planting 3 or 5 shrubs is not really a big ask, and it's going to be connected to an existing system. So I'm not really sure what the over concern about that is.
Can I call it?
Yeah, we do, actually, we do have the request to speak from Mr. Frankel. If we're ready, Mr. Frankel, would you like to speak? Please state your name and address. Thank you.
Tom Frankel, 6716 East Montecito, Chairman, members of the board. It was a surprise to me that Crown Castle didn't want to, maintain the plants. I'm happy to do it, so if you can go along with that, I put them in and maintain them. I'm personally happy with that. I don't think it's an unreasonable request. I think it's a little bit of a waste, but it's not worthy of 8 people talking about 4 or 5 shrubs in the back, 330 feet back. As far as location of it, Commissioner Kaminsky, I just think it's, first of all, no matter how you disguise them, they don't look like trees, they don't look like evergreens, they don't look like whatever they're disguised as. They look like no matter who, wherever you go, they look like attempts at disguising a cell phone tower, in my opinion. And the idea that we're taking it off of the street where it is currently, moving it 300 feet off. I have four additional properties within 2 blocks of there. Crown Castle approached me on all of them. I do not own Tom Scott anymore. And I think it's a great site for it. The Whitey's Garage is a garage. I believe it's C4. It's the heaviest zoning you can get. There's a salvage yard on one side of it, and I believe a garage or a storage facility on the other. So it's not as though the only residential really is Tom Scott, and we're pulling it 300 feet away and away from Scottsdale Road, the existing towers. So I'm happy to do the shrubs if you go along, if I do, and if that's all we're talking about, hopefully it's done. If there are more things to talk about, I'm happy to answer questions or talk about them.
If there's nothing else, okay. I think we have exhausted all questions at this time. Thank you both for your time and.
Thank you. Just in closing, Chair
Yes.
Higgs and Commission, as Mr. Frankel said, he would maintain it, and my client will accept that, and we can move forward.
Yes, thank you for
Appreciate your time.
having that on the record. Thank you. Okay, with that, can I ask for a motion? We have a motion from Commissioner Scarborough.
Chair Higgs?
Yes.
Real quick before that, if I know there was talk about increasing the size of the proposed eucalyptus, that might be included in the motion.
Okay, thank you. Did you track that?
I'll do my best.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair Higgs. I'd like to make a motion for recommendation of approval to City Council for Case 1 UP 2024 per the staff recommended stipulations and the increase in size of trees to 24-inch box, 2-inch caliper, after finding that the conditional use permit criteria have been met.
Do we need to address? Did we cover
Second.
everything there? Okay.
Second.
And we have a second from Commissioner Ertel. Roll call vote, please.
Chair Higgs,
Yes.
Vice Chair Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Kaminsky,
Yes.
Commissioner Ertel,
Yes.
Commissioner Joyner,
Yes.
Commissioner Scarborough.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes our evening meeting here. Thank you for everyone's time. Any final comments or questions? Nope. Okay, with that, motion for adjournment.
Can I wish my son a happy birthday?
Absolutely.
Happy birthday, Max.
There you go. Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion for adjournment. Okay, great. All in favor? Motion passes. We're adjourned. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.